people want to know that they're not crazy, to have big feelings, getting outside of yourself actually matters.
Oh, this is dramatic. Mayim Bialik, come on in. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, now that the lights are on you, I see like fabulous leather pants.
They're pleather.
They're the pleather. Hi, can I hug?
Yeah.
I'm a hugger. My kids hate it, but
you.
nice to have you. Thank you for doing this. My goodness.
Thank you.
So I can, if they're pleather, so I can pet you.
You can, well, you know.
We'll stop there. They're I think I have. Do I have the same pair from like Aritzia?
They look like it.
Yeah.
They make you sweat though.
I like that.
Like they're very, like they, when I take them off, they're like moist.
Sticky. That's nice.
Yes.
Oh, and these are funky cool too.
Thank
See,
you.
but not, oh, those are like suede?
No, they're like velvet. They're plush.
Okay, I'm just all over.
I'm a vegan person, so
I know.
nothing is real. So
But
it's not
exactly.
suede and it's not leather.
Okay, so forgive me because suede,
Yeah.
See, I'm not using my brain.
Yeah.
I don't even associate that
I didn't
with
either.
real, like
Right.
with,
It's, yeah. It's
and I was like a
it's
fabric,
leather.
like this.
No, it's leather, yeah. And
Yeah.
not every vegan, like some vegans wear suede. I just happen
Sure.
to not. So when I see things that are,
That would kind of look it. But
yeah, but they're
Fake it.
not. Right, exactly.
And fraction of the price, probably.
Fake it till you make it.
Bingo. I'm very good at faking it. But then you get to the point where you don't care
Right.
at a certain age. Now, obviously about things like that, yes. But as far as faking it for other reasons, and oh my gosh, I want people to like me.
Correct.
I think that's the beauty of getting older. And I'm a few years older than you, but the beauty of getting older is letting go and
Yeah.
not caring about all of the things that we care about when we're young.
We're in our wisdom years.
That's the nice way of putting it, right? Do you see how wise we are? You're welcome. Have you heard about my weird sock obsession?
I put them on now.
Okay, you don't have to. You can take it home with you. My point is, for me, I
What's
just tend
happening
to.
here? Is this a sock? Wait. This is happening. Wait, are
Okay,
they
so
leg
this is the
warmers? Oh, I'm into this.
This actually might
Oh, I'm stealing
be
these.
you.
This is me.
Do you know that I've had like 5, 6 tapings in the last couple of days, and not everybody
I'm obsessed.
ran
No, I'm obsessed.
from those.
And it's
Hey,
going to
take
look
'em.
like they're eating your legs. Because, oh, that's amazing.
The key is, will you wear them with shorts or skirt?
No.
There you go. So
This is a
we're not
pajama
quite-
sock. Oh, we're doing it. We're doing it.
You
If
don't have to.
But if you do
just,
it, I'm doing it.
I just get more comfortable with my fuzzy socks.
I'm putting them on over my regular socks.
Love you, great. The key is with some of the men.
I mean,
And I'm
I
like,
might like tuck my
you
pants in.
need to tuck them in.
Because then it looks like I'm being eaten by alligators.
It's so amazing. That is so amazing. That's when you know
I mean,
you don't care. But one of the cool things is when the men come in and they pick like,
I know my publicist is watching and like saying, untuck them, untuck them.
that
No,
means
just-
you need to leave them
just
tucked,
for a minute.
right?
Oh my God, there's like,
So hot. Really, it's so, I mean, with the blazer too, it's perfection.
it's, you know.
Why not?
All right.
When the men, okay, let's see how long she leaves them on. I hope the whole time.
The whole time.
Please.
Totally.
Thank you. Just don't think about your publicist. When the men come in, like Dana White was here, and you know, he's got his like black leather and
Yeah.
camo, and then you've got pink and white fuzzy socks.
I love it.
Like I do too. And that's just called,
But he wasn't brave enough
Having
to put alligators on his feet.
I don't know that those were there. And you know what? If any man was brave enough to do something crazy, it'd probably be him, right?
I love these so much.
I'm so happy. We can end it now. Okay? She's happy. Thanks for making, if nothing else comes out of today, you're welcome. You got some
I love
cute
them.
socks. Would your boys be okay with those?
I mean, they're used to a lot of weird things that I put on my feet. So.
They're 18, 15 now?
18
Are
and
those the ages?
15.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have almost 18, 20, and 22.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
You've been where I am.
sometimes there's something besides hot tea in here based on,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for my survival,
Good to know.
right?
Good to know.
And I have 2 girls and my boy's in the middle.
Okay, got it.
And I will tell you, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for, obviously, being a mother is everything and it trumps everything else in my life. Obviously cliche, but like, man, they've saved me in many ways. Thank God for that boy. Like, I was a military kid growing up. I didn't, no drama was allowed.
Yeah.
Like, it's just how it was.
No,
It's a
I've
different
heard-
era, right? Our generation.
And I've heard that, you know, raising girls now it's harder. they're encouraged to have a voice, which is a great thing.
Love that.
That means you have to listen to it.
Shut up.
Same
right?
with boys, though, because I say that to my kids all the time, when they express their feelings about where we're eating, what the plates look like, the dishwasher didn't dry the dishes well enough. And I say, I really appreciate that you were raised in an era where your opinion matters. And it does. But it doesn't mean that things are going to change because of it.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
I'm not getting a new dishwasher because this one doesn't dry the way you want.
You take the paper towel or the dish towel, and guess what? With the cup, you have to...
It's not a big deal. It's really okay.
So that's one of those, and it's funny, I've learned in the last several years to say this, and it's not a but, it's an and. It's like, I love your opinion.
Yes.
And... doesn't mean it's going to change.
Sometimes I say, when I was a child, do you think anyone cared where I wanted to eat out to dinner?
Right?
The answer is no.
No. And
sometimes I remind them of that.
Yeah, every once in a while. Not quite the, walking to school 2 miles uphill. Right, but
no,
close.
But the fact that, also, I raised them in LA, which is its own challenge. But yeah, the notion of but I want Thai food. Okay, so another night we'll have Thai food.
Yeah, so now I want it too.
Mexican food.
I want it too, but on principle, you are absolutely not getting it. I love you.
That's
I'm still in charge. And are they taller than you? Are you?
Both are taller than me. Yeah. It happened after COVID. So yeah, happened this past year. The 18-year-old is 6 feet, which I actually thought he's got the body type of my side of the family, which is not very tall.
Okay.
But my ex-husband's genes won, and he's very happy about that.
How tall is your ex-husband?
He's 6 feet tall.
Okay.
And so we assumed that my younger son, who has more of his genes and looks more like his side of the family, we're like, okay, well, he'll be 6 feet, but we don't know about this first one. And he just shot up he's just like a string bean.
I bet he's happy. No offense, Mom.
He likes it.
Yeah.
He likes, being taller than me.
Well, and it's one of those, and my son's 6'4", and I have a brother who's 6'8", and a dad who's shrinking but was 6'6" and 6'5".
So it was going to happen.
And I'm like, you're welcome. And my ex-husband is shrinking as well. Poor thing. And so they're definitely coming from my son. I'm like, again, you're welcome.
Yeah. Are your girls tall as well?
The youngest is the tall. Actually, they're in that picture behind you. It's from Greece this past summer. But hey, I can't see anything because I don't have my glasses on from here. But
you look great in that picture.
Okay, good. Most importantly, forget them. Thank you. The youngest is the tallest of the 2 girls, and she's 5'7", 5'8".
That's tall. I mean, where I come from, that's very tall.
True. I'm still here. I'm 5'11".
Yeah, you're a tall person also.
Tall, but when I was young, I hated it.
Yeah.
Because it's awkward enough to be a young girl.
Sure.
80s was, I don't know, to me more of a kind time, certainly, than now with what our girls are dealing with. But then I was senior of high school, 5'10", 118 pounds, skinny, awkward, completely, I couldn't control it.
A lot of limbs, yeah.
Yeah, and then, it took a long time to be like, hell no, I'm going to stand up straight.
Yeah.
And yes, I have big hair, which our hair might grow throughout the show today. Who knows, right?
It's just going to join. It's going to be like a mycelium mushroom under
which
the
would be
earth.
a beautiful combination. But it takes a long time, and hopefully not for our kids, to be like, this is me. This is good. This is how I am, and I'm going to stand tall and not slouch to conform to fill in the blank next to.
But that's something that I would imagine it's harder for girls, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
We're supposed to say it's hard for everyone, and it is. But there's an extra special attention.
For sure. And now with social media, and again, I had an opportunity to live here in Los Angeles probably 8, 9 years ago, and I didn't because I was afraid with my girls in particular. And it was a good decision, I think. I mean,
the struggle's real in LA. The struggle's real, raising kids here.
So I'm going to get to that because I'm fascinated by the decisions that you've made because you recognize that struggle from a unique perspective. But hello, I knew who you were and about you, but then you dig a little deeper, and I guess I didn't. So I'm just going to rattle off.
Okay.
No, it's just so cool. And I might forget something here, but all these different titles: actor, writer, producer, director, podcaster, author. You have a doctorate in neuroscience. So you're a scientist.
I am a scientist.
And you're a mom.
Yes.
So maybe we reversed the order. It wasn't in order of importance for sure.
Well, the one that you get no training for.
Yeah.
No benefits from the government, no assistance. That's the one.
The most important.
That is the most important one.
Yeah.
And it's the one that, as a society also, I would argue, we don't give enough, support and education for. But yeah.
So it's been what? Your son's 18. So you were, like 30. I was about the same age when I started having kids.
I wanted to have my first child before 30, and I was 2 months shy of 30.
Okay.
When I had him. I was in grad school.
Wow.
Yeah, I had my first in grad school. And then I took my doctoral hood pregnant with my second.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I was that lady on stage who could only wear one pair of flats because my feet were so wide and my ankles were so solid. And I filed my thesis and got pregnant that week. And then by the time, graduation came to get my hood, I was 7 months pregnant. So, a lot of people wait, kind of for school to be over or to get their career in order before they have kids. And while that works for some women, I had a very strong sense that that wasn't going to be my path and that I needed life to happen. I needed it to happen even while I was doing other aspects of life. So I finished my coursework and then I was mostly done with data collection. I wrote my thesis, though, on my side, breastfeeding and typing with one hand.
Are you serious?
I literally wrote my thesis and edited it with a newborn, yeah.
I hope you have pictures of that.
There wasn't smartphones then.
It's different. It was different then.
There's a lot of things, my second son was born at home. I was unassisted till pushing. I'm like that crazy home birth lady. But I was talking about it the other day and we didn't have smartphones. So there's one picture, that was taken.
Yeah.
And it's on a disc somewhere on a hard drive backup. And I was like, I need to pull that up because also there are times in your life, and I think at my age, it's a time in my life when I want to remember when I was strong and courageous, and I want that picture. I want to remember.
That's what I'm saying.
Because you feel $1 million when you do something like that, or when you feel like you run a marathon. It's amazing. Anyway, so I don't have pictures of a lot of things. And the first child usually has the album with a picture every month. So I have the album. And then the second one, it wasn't just he was second. It was we started getting smartphones and, everything started changing. So
I remember making a big purchase of it was a camera and video at the same time. And it made a lot of noise to get it to.
It had a tiny screen that you could
tiny screen, yeah. And I look at my brother, one of my brothers has kids who are 10 and 13. Mm-hmm. And listen, they are phenomenal kids. Love them. They're awesome. And I'm like, I got pictures yesterday.
Yep.
I don't need more today.
That's right.
But everything in their life, it's every day. He's documented.
And also a little bit I think about, when I had to write my thesis, we didn't really have the internet to do that for us.
No.
So the internet existed, but you couldn't get most articles from the internet. And so you had to go to the library. There was a place, and you would get a card that you had to put cash in a machine, and it would spit out this copy card. And if you lost it, it was losing cash. And you would Xerox from stacks, from a 10 stories of a library, you'd Xerox all the papers you needed to use as references for your thesis. So when I hear people writing their thesis now, I know it's still hard. I have a lot of respect for you, but it's you could just click, 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 and it'll do your bibliography for you. And I think about that with parents. They don't know how hard we had it. We had to go to Walgreens to print pictures, right? Or you would buy a photo printer, but it never worked.
Never worked.
And now you can literally go from your phone, hit the pictures you want, and the album will arrive the next day.
Yeah. Beautiful captions.
That sounds like you'd be a much better parent than I was.
I know. It's I'm sad. I'm sad in some ways. And I do say, there was excitement in waiting a week after that college party, and then all the girls would go to Target together to pick them up, and you're in the aisle going, oh my gosh. And then but what if the film got jacked up?
Oh yeah.
Then did the party even happen?
What if the dude processing the photos wanted to talk to you about what he saw when you picked it up? Did you ever have that happen?
Oh, I'm running out. Here, don't look at me, put on a hat. No, that's not me doing that in that picture.
People don't know how hard we had it. You had to talk to the guy at Walgreens who'd be like, hey, did you have a good time at that party?
Does it look like I had a good time?
So gross.
Yeah, you perv, stay away from me. But no, the reason I asked that is because I envisioned you with the laptop and a baby and doing all those things because that's what we do and we multitask. But like, I want him someday to fully comprehend as much as a young man can what his mom was doing at that time. That's special.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting aspect of parenting, especially, you know, in this generation where we're allowed to be self-conscious about our parenting, meaning we're allowed to point out to our kids, they're eating that, but we don't eat that, right? Or they parent that way, but we don't do that, right? So they have this consciousness already, but I think by and large, kids just want to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
That's still always true. No matter how organic you feed them or what, you know, medicine you give them or don't give them, or like, they just want to be like everybody else.
It's true.
So I think there's, if my kids decide to have kids, I think like that's when they'll have a lot of realizations, which is also when I have a lot of realizations.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, we're doing college tours now for my older one, and you know, there was this notion of like, he acknowledged like, I know that you had to leave your life to take me to like see places, and thank you. And I was like, that's very sweet.
When did that begin? Like the gratitude where you felt that they kind of saw?
I mean, I think now that, you know, it's a transition period, you know, and it's my first going away. And so like that's, I think he feels that too. He's a very, he's a sensitive person, meaning he feels a lot of things. And I think he understands that. But, you know, I've got a, you know, quirky sense of humor. And so, you know, from the time they were little, I would remind them, you know, like, I nursed you for a very long time.
I gave you life.
I'm just reminding you, like, that if you want your first sentence to be like, thank you, Mama, for the milk for all this time, I'd be fine with that.
No pressure.
It was not their first sentence, but, you know. But there's a lot of joking about that. And I don't want to make them self-conscious about it. You know, a lot of people associate, like, I'm a, you know, proponent of attachment parenting. And a lot of people think that means that I'm a helicopter parent. And it's actually, those things sometimes go together, but for me, it actually did not. So the notion that I was we were very attached, and we were very physically attached, and we were very physically close, and, you know, but there is a lot of individuation that happens, you know, even when you raise them like that, and that's important, you know? I don't want kids who don't feel secure when they're away from me.
The gratitude part, I think, is so interesting, and just, listen, I don't sit there and say, okay, we're moms, we're amazing, we do it all. But you know what? I also feel like for so long, I did the opposite, which isn't healthy either.
Yeah.
And you're trying to be everything to them.
Correct.
And you know, at first, not necessarily, oh my gosh, you fell. No, like, okay, let them get themselves up. But like, I think now that they're older, there's a part of me that's like, you know what? Don't be a jerk.
Right.
And I'm trying really hard right now to do the right thing without that book. And I'm going to make mistakes.
Right.
Be kind.
Yep.
And be grateful. And I hope that you see those mistakes and remember this. And I hope you're better than me.
Well, and also, like, I mean, I love that you said that. And also, I want you to be okay on your own.
Yeah.
I don't want to raise a child who can't be an adult, you know? And I see that. And there's a trend that we see, you know, of a lot of people not really sure how to be adults. And I don't want that for them. I want them to still be learning. I don't expect them to figure it out by the time they go to college. But my younger one was, you know, like rolling his eyes about something I was trying to tell him or teach. It was a nutrition thing. I just wanted him to know something about nutrition that we were talking about. And he's like, oh. And I said, you know, I'm not telling you this because I need to be right. And I'm not telling you this because I get to tell you what to put in your body every second of every minute for the rest of your life. I said, I'm telling you this because I want you to have information so that you can make decisions. That's all.
Yeah.
You don't need to roll your eyes at me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. That's where I lose my, you know what?
Oh, is that your button?
The eye roll is number 2 to the tone.
Oh. Disdain, disrespect, what is it?
Disrespect. And not like I am in charge.
You were raised military?
I was raised military, but it was a kind.
Right, but there is a large aspect of respect.
Absolutely, but it's almost, it isn't the be afraid or anything like that. It's I'm your mother. and also, that's our neighbor.
Yeah.
And that's the grocery store clerk.
Right.
And you're 15.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're 22.
I love that you said that.
Like,
yeah.
No, and but kindness, no matter what it is, we teach them when they're in kindergarten and to be kind and stand in line and to help your friends. That should never be lost.
Correct.
And they know it. And sometimes, and my son, who's so like observant and will watch, and then he'll see the girls, and then sometimes that makes me, because I grew up with brothers and like no drama, and I'm like, what is this? What is wrong? And I don't know, and I'm trying to still comprehend that. But he'll walk by and he'll be like, it's okay, Mom, I know. But I. No matter what, yes, your words, but sometimes it's the way you say them.
Oh, yeah.
And so literally, he goes, Mom, I think you kind of went off a little quick there. I was like, sweetheart, thank you, I love you. You know, if you know that the tone is my thing, not a fear thing, but like, that's and I'm learning why that's a trigger for me, right? Like, again, I'm working on myself. But there is I think it's not just a mom respect, it's a respect for each other as humans.
Yes.
And when you are intentionally nasty, especially to the person who gave you milk and life, right? And then I kid, but I don't. Like, what is that line?
Well, so, I mean, there's two aspects. You know, for me, the sort of general notion is if you wouldn't speak to a teacher that way, do not speak to me that way. That's all. I have an extra special challenge in that my younger one is on the spectrum. He does not hear tone the way you and I do.
Does he hear his own tone?
And I know a lot of people are like, he's just pretending to be autistic so that he can, but some of it is like,
say that?
Well, some people would say like, he knows when his tone is, but we have found out through a lot of fascinating experimentation, he does not hear his own tone the way other people do. He often will hear a tone that I'm not intending. So it's like a very interesting, it's been a really interesting challenge. And also, like, I believe God gives you what you need to work on. And so this is an arena where, like, I was given something that's like, oh, wait a second. I don't get to be rough with my words, meaning when I lose it, he's going to be the meter for the house. Because the older one, I think, had to tolerate my tone, right? Because he was just like, had to grin and bear it. And the younger one was the meter for like, this isn't okay. That hurts. Right. But when he is generating the tone, he often does not know that he sounds sharp. And so I then will react like, ouch, which sometimes if I don't have enough sleep, resources, help, or support, my ouch becomes, I'm sorry, what? Which makes it worse. Because then he's, again, picking up on the extreme end of my tone, right? It's fascinating.
That's so hard.
It's really hard.
Well, but then you have your other son.
Correct. And that's helpful because he sometimes will say, Fred, I don't think you know what you sound like when you say you don't want blueberries. And then sometimes my older son will say like, no, I think you're out of line here. Back off.
So
it's a lot of talk in my house. And my younger one also didn't speak till he was 4.5.
And
so he was
that's
this, like,
is that
silent,
because of?
Yeah, he was like this. I mean, he signed. We taught him signs, and he was very communicative, very expressive. He was never frustrated. But then other kids started picking up on it, and that's when, we were like, oh, he needs some support. So anyway, he finally spoke, and now, we talk a lot in our house.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk through a lot.
Those are beautiful lessons too. Like to have to how you mentioned about God giving you things that you have to work on, right?
Yeah.
But to have to also, and that's the thing, 1 kid, 3 kids, whatever it is, each one, with or without being on a spectrum, anything, receives
they've got
it
their own
differently.
Yeah, totally.
And my youngest keeps track and score of everything. And I'm like, yes. What's the phrase? Is it equal but not fair but not equal?
Oh, yeah.
And because I'm trying to be fair with everything, right? It doesn't mean it's going to equal the same thing for each person.
Exactly.
And
that's hard.
And it's the same way in corporate America. Like these lessons are painful now, not just for them, but for us. And then there is accountability, right? And so when there is a tone, Like,
yeah.
and it depends.
And I was raised by, parents who were born during World War II. And my dad in particular, like, respect was like a thing, tone. Like, you could not, fresh, that's what they said. Don't be fresh.
Sassy fresh.
Yeah, sassy fresh. My dad was really like, that was a real sticking point of his. So I also grew up, and I was raised in a home that did have a little more of a fear factor, associated with what happened when you crossed, those lines. So I also, I'm grateful to my ex-husband for, like, he was raised, actually, his parents were both in the Army.
Really?
But he was raised, he was an Army brat. He was born in North Carolina. But he was raised by two very, very gentle, compassionate, like very gentle, quiet, people.
Yeah.
And so it was really him, helping me, especially when we had kids, to be like, whoa, hey, whoa, what's going on here? And I didn't do it perfectly all the time. But I'm very grateful, that I had a partner who was able to flag that, and be able to say, like, no, we're not, no, doors don't get slammed.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I thought that's what they're there for. When you're mad, you slam a door.
Yeah. Okay, I love that, that you said that about your partner, about your ex-husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been divorced for, what, a decade?
Over. It's been like 11 years. My kids were 4 and 7, so yeah.
How hard was that at those ages? And by the way, I'll just throw this in there.
Yeah.
That I thought, oh gosh, you do this in your kids. My dad's parents had been married for 43 years when they got divorced.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
And they were everything to all of us. And my dad was 40. And that was one of the first times I recall seeing my dad cry.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a complete, not even judgment phrase. That's not even a phrase, but it's like, it doesn't matter when it happens.
Right.
It's still going to be devastating.
Yeah.
Maybe if they're two and they aren't aware, that's different.
Well,
but
I'd like to point out, I think it was Louis C.K. in one of his specials said, like, when you say you got divorced and people say, oh.
I'm sorry.
He always says, no, don't say that, because it's because things were bad and this is the solution,
Yes.
Meaning it's never like, oh, let's keep having a really hard, terrible time. That's, he's like, it's nothing, it's something to say, like, this is a transition that's difficult. And that's kind of how I feel about it. And especially being like a public person, people have all sorts of opinions about, like, well, you didn't try hard enough or, and it's like, it is never the first resort. It's never the first thing you do. It's often not even the second solution. It's often not the third, fourth, or seventh solution. So, I do have a lot of friends who are getting, divorced later in life, and the kids are teens or in their 20s. And, like, if there was a right way to do it, we would be told the right way to do it, and everybody would do that.
It's just like becoming a parent. The book does
like
not
there's
exist.
There's not. And so for some people, waiting may be the answer. For other people, it may not be. And also, you don't know what anybody's actual life is until you've like been in their house. So, what I will say is that we were able to, and are able to co-parent. And for me, what that means is we didn't stay long enough to not be able to do that.
Yeah. Oh.
And that's not always the case. You know what I mean? Like, some people, oh, it's really bad. And then you end up, once you get divorced, it gets better. And that doesn't mean that, like, oh, things must not have been that bad. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we were able to make that transition as smooth as possible for our kids, like, for the benefit of those children. My younger one doesn't remember us living together.
Yeah.
He's seen pictures.
He was 4, you said?
He was 4.
Yeah.
And, that's the age. And also he wasn't verbal yet, which is, really fascinating to have a conversation where that this 4-year-old is hearing everything you're saying, but he does not have the ability to articulate the way a verbal 4-year-old might.
And just his feelings with it.
It was very interesting, though. I mean, he's a very emotional, he was a very emotional child. And, we had a feeling he was on the spectrum, but, we didn't have oh, well, he's on the spectrum, so he's going to behave like this. And even then you don't know. So yeah, he had a very, very specific emotional reaction. I used music for that transition for him. He's a very musical child. And my older one's like, I remember what it was like. I was like, oh.
Really?
Well, I don't remember it being that bad. No, I think he I think he probably remembers a lot of the conversations. And, fortunately, he wasn't exposed, to fighting, screaming, things like that. But just goes to show you, kids can feel tension. They can feel conflict. And it's one of the gifts of parenting in this generation is that we're not taught, or I hope that women in particular are not being taught to pretend they're not feeling something that they are. And there's an age-appropriate way to communicate to children, I'm having a hard day, or I feel sad, without making it their burden, without making them feel like they have to fix it because it's not for them to fix. But I'm actually grateful, that I had enough support, and we had a family therapist who kind of worked with our kids through divorce, which is really cool. But to be able to say to them, this is hard, and it's a grown-up thing. That is not your fault. It's not your job. And not to say like people have it a lot worse, but we have a roof over our head and we're going to live in 2 homes. You're going to have 2 homes where you have food, you have a toothbrush, you have a doll, you have clothing, and to keep it right-sized. You know what I mean? To keep it right-sized, because I think a lot of what we're seeing and, a lot of what I've been reading about, again, this generation is this notion of like, they have the most words, the most therapy, the most nomenclature, and they're the most anxious and depressed. And I want to make sure, to the best of my ability, that I also don't give my kids a complex that because they have complicated feelings, that they are the most devastated human on the planet. Because it's important to know what's going on all over the world and all over this country.
Yeah.
And when you get off the freeway in Los Angeles, you can see what's happening in this city, in our state, in this country, and all over the world. And again, I don't mean to be like, I had to walk 2 miles in the snow. But, I was raised by civil rights activists. And so I was raised to be aware of outside of my little bubble, and I want that for them. I think it will, hopefully equip them. And if the worst thing that happens is, they end up on a therapist's couch at 25 saying like, I didn't want to know about homelessness and civil rights, then I feel like, okay, we'll talk about it.
Not bad.
It's like, I'm sure they'll have other things to complain about, but yeah. And I get a lot of eye rolling of that too. Like, we know about what's happening.
It's just perspective. And we needed perspective back then too. The world was jacked up in certain ways then too.
Yeah, totally.
That's what happens when there's humans. There's going to always be issues and problems and racism and all the things. We just have to keep working. We've all experienced those things in different ways too. Right. It's funny because I've been divorced for about 4.5 years. Married for 20.
Wow.
2 days shy of 20. Together for 27, like age 20 to 47.
Oh, yeah.
I
literally thought you were 30 years old, by the way.
Can
we just talk about it?
No way.
I mean, I did a little research, but obviously not enough because I was like, she's young enough to be my child.
No. Oh my God. You're younger than me. Love you. Wow. Thank you. I do, listen, I have had like silver white hair for about 20 years.
Oh.
And so, I used to have brown hair.
Yeah.
And obviously this is pretty close to natural, but I have gone blonder because it hides the gray longer.
Yeah.
And so that's my only thing is in my dad's side of the family, my grandmother was white hair, black woman, white hair at like 20. Right. So I come by it naturally. So that's the only real fake thing is that I have to hide the gray because, this industry.
Well, over COVID, a lot of people gave up coloring, but you didn't?
Well, I was on national TV every day.
So yeah.
And they're hiring like 21-year-old girls. So like, what do you do to stay? If that's the worst thing I had to do to keep a job.
For sure.
It's color my hair fine.
I'm excited to see you go gray at some point.
But. Oh, I'm ready. You should see what's underneath here. And there's these wonderful, brown, blondish hairsprays that cover when you don't have time to get to your person or when I
just did a job and they were like, yeah, we'd like your grays not to exist. And so magic, they just brushed. God. Yeah, I don't color it, so you can't see probably in this lighting, but there's a lot, in here. And they just brushed it on and I was instantly 10 years younger.
Like, oh, wow, look at me. Yeah. No, thank you. And I do feel younger than ever. And it's certainly been a process. And a long process here to accept the decision that I felt I needed to make.
I still grieve. I hate to tell you that because I'm sure it doesn't sound great. Yeah, it's a loss. It's an enormous loss, and it's also it's a loss for children. That's like I still have my wedding album. And I keep it because that's the story of their parents.
Correct.
That's the story of the mommy cell and the daddy cell, and they got married, and then they made babies, right? Like, that's still their story. I don't keep it out on the coffee table.
Yeah.
Like, that would be overkill. But no, I remember when, you know, I mean, I think it had been, for 5 years, I didn't look at anything. Like, I didn't want to look at the dress. Like, what do you do? You know, what do you do with all things? And then it was a process, you know, and I got divorced during Big Bang Theory, you know, so like I was also like actively working and, you know, so I had a support system at work, which was really nice, you know, but I had to show up somewhere other than my home, you know, it was really an interesting, but yeah, there's a real grief to it. And also, you know, I grew up, my parents were each other's first love.
Yeah.
They were together for 53 years, you know, they dated since they were teenagers. And then my father, of blessed memory, passed about 10 years ago. And, you know, they were like still, like my mom would say, even when he was like in his wheelchair and ailing, she said when he was wheeled into the room, her heart would still skip a beat. You know, like it was that, I know. So like love story. So there was also a real myth. And, you know, I come from a, you know, traditional Jewish family where like you don't get divorced. It's not a thing people do. So it was also like, it's like a little scarlet letter. It's a little scarlet letter.
For sure. And to get over that. And that's why, why I hesitated for so long. Number one, my babies. And number two, because I'm not a quitter.
Right.
Like, and I was proud of that. Like you fight through stuff and you push and then you reconsider at times.
Yeah.
It depends, right? And it's such a personal decision. But because of the kids, and you know, Catholic. So kind of same thing where like this, you just,
right.
And my God, what a journey. But I also hope that, you hope your kids don't ever have to make tough decisions like this.
Yeah.
There will be many. Hopefully this isn't one of them because this is so personal, right? It's the next level. And it doesn't just affect us, it affects others. But I do hope that, and I wonder if you feel the same, just that like, and mine were when it happened, 13, 15, 17.
Wow, you were in it.
It's in it.
I mean,
and
the teen
COVID,
years.
No. Divorce
You
is
deserve
final.
an award. You deserve a very special award.
I'm tired, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It was, and it was a very quick process, and we co-parent well as well, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
And that's a choice. It's a decision that the adults in the room quite often choose not to make, and that's where I don't have patience because that's when you really say you care about your kids.
You have more control than you think, honestly, is the way I see it.
100%. With if the kids are truly your priority, which is what you say, well, then that means we got to have some conversations. But it was final like 3 months before the pandemic began. And I live in the Northeast, which is similar to this as far as all the shutdowns and everything else. And
weather, something we didn't have here.
Huge.
Yeah.
Weather sucks there when we're not in a pandemic and to me it affects me a lot.
Yeah, I didn't take it for granted that we could actually go outside for all of lockdown.
Yes.
Versus
gray for 8 months and snowstorm. Anyway, I just hope that, and I think every parent, for everything that we go through, and our kids are watching everything, to your point, that they are a little more aware. They aren't, you know what, hopefully they aren't as hard on themselves. And to be, I beat the crap out of myself for that. For failing myself, for failing them, for failing God, potentially for all of the things. And so that's not their burden, but I also think as they're old enough and able to have the conversation, the C word that no one likes these days, that they can be more aware and be better, whatever that means, when troubles hit them at some point, because they will.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, you mentioned earlier that notion of like admitting you made mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that the marriage was a mistake. That's not the kind of mistake. I'm saying that all along the way, as we're parenting and as we're trying to communicate to them what it's like to be an adult, it's our first time doing it too, right? Like, I've never been this old. And also, I used to say that to them all the time, like, I've never been your parent with both of you this age. This is the first day. Like, we're doing it today.
I love that. Can I use that?
Like, like, I've never done this. I don't know what happens next, you know? I mean, I'm looking at colleges and I'm like, what, people do drugs? What's happening? Why am I here? Anyway, but that notion that you also want them to come out of whatever you have to go through, seeing that you can do it. You don't have to beat yourself up. It's okay to not get it right, you know, even if it's dinner, like whatever it is, you know?
And that it's scary. And I've acknowledged that
being an adult is hard. Being human is really hard. And that's the thing. No one really told me that when I was a kid. I had this notion, and I think it was my parents, society, religion, everybody, that like, you go through life and like, oh, some people might be mean, but like everything will be fine. And you'll find your group of friends and then you'll be introduced to Prince Charming and then you'll get married and everything's going to be great. And then you just live like a grown-up. And no one prepared me for what being human was actually going to be like.
Because your parents couldn't do that either. None of them.
I mean,
they all were doing
they were kids too. They were kids too. My mom got married at 18.
Wow.
And she wasn't pregnant. As she tells it, it was the only way out of the house.
Oh my gosh.
Out of the house.
That's amazing.
And she loved my dad. And they had been dating for 3 years and blah, blah, blah.
And it worked out, 53 years.
Well, you know, you get to decide if it worked out when you know a little more about them. But yes, they stayed together for 53 years. Yeah.
Mine are about to hit 53 this year.
Yeah.
And is it perfect to know?
It was a very different world. I look at my kid and he's like, Bubby was my age when she got married. I said, yep. And we're still trying to figure out like how to unload the dishwasher when I ask.
Exactly. Well, that's the scary part too, for sure. I'll share this with you because I think you'll appreciate it with your parents and being activists, et cetera. My mom's white, Irish Italian, dad's black, and 1971 is when they got married. Wow. Coming off that civil rights era. Yeah. And my mom's family was nonplussed about that decision and made her choose between them and my dad and marrying a black man. Like and so when I say 53 years, whoa. And that has offered me, and it gets me choked up because their courage and their choice. I mean, and both of them, but I look at my mom and being forced to make that decision between the man you love who saw you, who guess what? Guess what? Didn't see. People get all mad if you say, I don't see color. Okay, stop. We're not being literal, okay? Stop it. However, I don't care that you're a white Jewish woman. I care that you're a human and I'm excited to talk to you. Like that. So my parents lived that way and it has offered me some perspective, not a comparison.
But that's your story. That's your story.
Perspective on like, okay, yes, this is tough. Yeah. And it was tough for them. And them and them and them. And so like, that's where I think the judgment can drop and to lead with kindness because you don't have any idea what anyone else is going through.
And also, and you know, I can't help but also think of like the larger, like when you even take it back another generation, And, you know, I have a podcast that focuses on mental wellness and we talk a lot about this sort of like, you know, flashy term, like, oh, it's generational trauma. Like, what is that? What is that? So that is also something that is part of our history, right? No matter where you come from, like the egg that made you was in your grandmother.
Yes.
So whatever she was doing, that's actually when the gametes that became you were hanging out, right? What was that environment?
Yeah.
Right? What was the environment then that her grandmother had, right? Like that's in our bodies. We are now learning, like science catches up with all the healers who were like, you're holding something in your body, right? And science is like, oh, yeah, there's stuff that we hold.
A lot.
Yeah,
a lot more than
for other people.
I am learning now how much I have held. And I was like, oh no, I'm good. And then you start to go there. Maybe that's the age thing too. And it's like, oh crap, no wonder, you know? But I also think that in general, and we are so hard on ourselves and in the comparison. So that's why there's a difference between comparing to my parents in perspective and to stop to comparing to each other who we don't even know. Okay, well, and listen, I'm sensitive about this because, well, as a woman of color, you experienced this that I didn't. As a white person, I can't really. That doesn't make your trauma less.
Right.
And I get
the trauma Olympics is like,
stop. And that's why there's no, like, just sounds cheesy. Maybe I should have been born in the 60s.
No,
like,
it's
love each other.
That's it. It's like, and it's funny because, you know, we're hearing it more and more, and it's kind of like, you know, we're very Western. It's a capitalist, like Western way of thinking. Like until it can be quantified, until there's an equation and a paper and it's published in a journal that you respect, right? But people have been saying this for thousands of years, right? That the answer will always be more acceptance, more openness, more love, like more compassion. Right?
Yes.
And it was dismissed in the 60s as like, those hippies are just smoking too much weed. Which they may have been.
They may have been, but maybe some of those things were right on. But I think when we say, okay, based on this, you should feel this.
Yep.
Based on this, you should act this, vote this, date this. And that's when I'm like, okay, what you're doing is you're stereotyping, you're completely putting someone in a box, doing exactly what you preach against. So go away and just, again, I love you for you. And I don't care. Unless you come at me or touch my child, first and foremost, then I'll cut you. And then and my mouth might not be.
And you won't like my tone.
My tone, yes. And then I might have to go to timeout for my tone. You know, one thing that's so impressive, and maybe you don't view it that way, but gosh, it's so hard to be a public figure. And it's been later in life in a much different way for me, much lesser way than the Hollywood way and since you were a child. But I look back at, well, and you've been open about some things, right? I'm so grateful that you had the courage to do that. I don't know if you view it that way, but eating disorders, issues with food, depression, anxiety, OCD.
The whole list.
The whole list.
Yeah.
And I wonder, because I have no clue, genuine questions here. Like, as a child actor and being in that when it was a very different era. And all of the other isms and reasons and traumas and all the things, like, you've lived a life.
Yeah, I've had a big life. I've lived a life. And, you know, I think it's kind of interesting because, you know, the time that I was acting, I started professionally acting when I was 11, which is obviously very tiny. But for the industry, it's considered a very late entry because usually child actors start at like 2 or 3.
Even then?
So even then, most kids were in commercials and,
That's true.
And even like I was on Blossom from the time I was 14 to 19, but, you know, the other 2 teens on the show had been acting since they were little, you know, like toddlers. So I was the one who was like, I just got here.
Like you're the rookie.
What's happening? Right. So that being said, it's still, you know, I grew up in front of cameras and it was very strange, but you know, I like to say I had like 11 years before I even started acting just to grow up in my home, you know, which like does its own, you know, a lot happens in the first 11 years of your life. And yeah, I was raised by people who were raised by very hurt people, you know, and hurt people hurt. And, you know, 3 of my 4 grandparents came from Eastern Europe. My mom's parents fled the pogroms leading up to the Holocaust. My grandmother was an orphan, you know, by the time she was a teenager. And, you know, my mom's parents literally like met in night school where they were both trying to learn English. My grandmother, I don't think finished like elementary school. You know, they were sweatshop workers. They didn't speak English very well their whole life. They never drove. They went on an airplane twice in their whole life.
Wow.
And yeah, like I grew up with a mother whose native tongue was not English, you know? So, my dad's parents had a more assimilated kind of American experience. But, you know, World War II was a very hard time to be born. My grandfather served in the Army. He served in the U.S. Army. And, you know, my dad was conceived on leave visits, you know, while my grandfather was stationed. And, you know, my parents did the best that they could with the tools and resources and education that they were given. But times were very, very different. You know, they were parented during a war with a lot of trauma, you know. And some people go through the Depression or some people go through Holocaust, you know, and that era, and they come out optimistic and fantastic, and, you know. And my mom's mother in particular, she never recovered, you know, from what she saw. She never recovered. And so, you know, my mom is this like really bubbly, artistic, like charismatic person, but like there's a lot there, you know. And my dad, you know, struggled a lot. We didn't know what manic depression was. I just knew that sometimes he'd be up for days and he would, you know, think that he had special powers, you know, that other people didn't understand. And then other times I didn't know what I'd find when I came home, you know, and we didn't call it that. So to answer your question, the time when I was in the industry, I think affected me less than the other aspects of my life because I was really fortunate. I was always on clean sets. I never saw drugs. I never saw alcohol. I always worked with pretty professional grown-ups, you know? And, you know, I obviously was in a very charmed situation having my own television show when I was 14 and very new in the industry.
Gosh.
And
I knew that, obviously, but to hear you say that.
Yeah, it was it felt weird to me.
Really?
It literally felt like I was in this movie Beaches. I played Bette Midler when she was young. And it was literally like the movie came out and then like I woke up at 19 and like, what just happened? Like that's what it felt like. And then I was still, being in my home, with my parents, and there was a lot of struggle. I grew up in alcoholism, and, it's something that like, when you talk to enough people who grew up with addiction in their home, you'll often find that they have depression or anxiety or OCD or like something.
Yeah.
So, I was interviewed by Dan Harris, for the 10% Happier podcast. And, he was like, you got a lot of things. Like, why are so many things? And I was like, sit in an Al-Anon meeting. Find people who don't have all these things, Like, when you grow up with people who are struggling, you often struggle, And I was a real fix-it kid. I wanted to fix everybody's problems. I wanted to, like, be the person that everybody went to and, like, make it all okay.
That's a disease right there.
100%. 100%. And so, what it looks like is that there's not like a start, middle, and end to what it means to heal, And every subsequent challenge or wound will open that up. When I look now at my marriage, I see how many things was me reenacting, the only way I knew how to interact, right? And that's not to say if I knew better, I would have stayed married. Like that's not the point. The point is I get to take responsibility, for what was my part. What do I still have to work on? And what am I trying to impart to my kids, Because that's scary too, to be able to say to them, like, I really messed up yesterday when I said that to you, right? Let's go back. I'm going to do it again, And no one did that for me as a kid. They did the best they could, They really did. But yeah, people say alcoholism is the disease that can kill people who don't even have it. It's a family disease,
It is.
And yeah, it's been a very interesting road. And a lot of people in my family don't believe in those labels or diagnoses.
Really?
And that's, that's hard too, but everybody gets to do it their own way. And I don't have to manage that either,
You don't
I get
have
to take care of me,
that
take care of my kids. What's my relationship like with God? That's sort of my daily job, or with something bigger than me. You don't have to call it God.
For you.
Yeah. Yeah. I happen to call it that. But like, that's, where I try and gear most of my mental energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with all of those things,
Yeah.
what's a day in the life? Because along with those things, what is really blowing me away is all of the other things that you choose. I mean, your hands are in a little bit of everything. You're so busy.
Well, things are calming down now. But yeah, I have lived a very busy life.
So for the last several decades, sure. While handling that, like, how have you been such a pretty good multitasker, apparently? And I'm not saying that you've done it all perfectly.
No. Well, emotions can't hit a moving target. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So I think that's also the process, right? Yeah. Always being busy means you don't have to spend a lot of time inside, But, emotions are like pee. Like you can try and hold them in, but they're going to come out eventually.
Okay, why? I've not heard that one.
Yeah, so it's like eventually the body starts talking, the body will speak to you.
Is that why you're slowing down?
Yeah, that's part of why I'm slowing down, because like I can't do at 48 what I did at 18 or 28 or even 38. And there's still a lot that I can do, want to do. I mean, the podcast takes up a lot of my energy and I love that. I do that with my partner, which is like a whole other thing to talk about, of like my kids getting to see like, oh, our mom is dating someone. What is that? Like
I need your help with that.
I know, it's like a whole thing.
I need a date first, but then at that point, if you can help with that as well.
It's a whole thing.
But like that's because they're teenagers and they're watching and they're boys. Right. Protective.
Yep. And they're learning, So anyway, the podcast does take up a lot of my energy, but yeah, I was on Big Bang Theory for 9 years, and then I did a sitcom for 3 years, and then I did Jeopardy, for 2 years, and like that was not even full time, but it was still a lot. It's a big, time commitment. So yeah, it's quieter now.
Every single thing is big.
Everything's big. Yeah.
All the things that you just mentioned, and those are just like along with the other things. So what has made you dive deeper on wanting to? We got to come up with something better than things, but to dive deeper on that and to begin to heal more. What was the turning point?
I don't know if there's one turning point. It's a lot of things. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition at 23. And I have a thyroid condition, which a lot of people have a thyroid condition. I have an overactive thyroid. And it's interesting because back then, in 1998, they didn't know really what that meant in terms of like your larger health, meaning they didn't make any dietary recommendations. They were like, don't eat seaweed because it's high in iodine and the thyroid really likes iodine. But like, take all these pills and you'll be fine. And now when you're diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, it's like, don't eat gluten, don't do this, take these supplements, do work out like this and sleep like this. And so it's very interesting because I'm also realizing that like for 25 years, I've been functioning on, an autoimmune condition, which if I were diagnosed with that today, I'd be on a protocol, I'd be on a regimen, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, the body might need a little time. Like I need rest in a different way. And now when I read like, if you have an autoimmune condition, like optimal sleep hours, I was like, maybe I should try and sleep like a real person.
What a concept.
Right.
How much do you sleep?
I didn't used to sleep a lot, and now I need to be in bed for like 8 or 9 hours. I just have to be in bed. Well, I have to do it.
Well, I do too,
I go to bed before my kids, right? Well, so this is the thing. Your body will start talking.
Well, it kind of already, yeah. And that's also, again, we take it for granted.
Correct.
Because of our age, we're able to do it.
I used to function on 6 hours sleep. I'd take a red eye. Yeah, I would take a red eye and I'd be like, I'm right, let's go. And I was like, no, she can't do that anymore. Mama tired.
Yeah, when that out of body experience and you're looking, and plus then you sometimes like look in the mirror, like look hard. And I'm not saying in a critical way, but like honestly.
Yeah, well it's all these things.
That's the other thing.
Well, and also, I sort of got turned on to like, what does it really mean to meditate? Instead of what does it mean to like turn on a thing before you get to bed and like blah, blah, blah. What does it mean to take, I'm just going to say it. And this is every single person we have on our podcast who, has had a health challenge, has had a mental health challenge, grew up in trauma, is a practitioner, is like, you can't fake it. You can only fake it so long. And so that's also been part of it is like, what does it really mean to do yoga? Not just to like put on the cute outfit and, which it's important, but not just to put on the cute outfit and like take your water bottle and be like, I'm so hot, I'm sweaty, but what does it mean to really listen when they tell you that you have a power inside of your body that can heal things that are hurt? Like, what does it mean to weep in yoga when it's meditation time? What does it mean to like be able to listen to my body and when a pose hurts and makes me want to cry, that I don't shake it off. I hold it and I say like, what's hurting? What's really going on? And so I did. I got turned on to meditation, to a more, religious yoga practice that way.
That's the moving target thing too.
Yep. Sit your ass down. Like that's the thing. If you want to know why you're doing something, stop doing it. Right? And that's true of alcohol. It's true of work. It's true of sex. It's true of food. Right? If you want to figure out why you're doing it, stop doing it. So if you want to figure out like, why am I running so? Like, why am I so fast? Why do I have to do so? Stop doing it.
Did someone tell you? Did anyone? A lot of feelings. Yeah. Did anyone because you have good people in your life and your partner you've been with for a long time, like say, hey, knock knock.
It was my partner.
It was
the person that I've tried to push away the hardest, who knew the soonest what I needed.
Did you listen?
No. I didn't listen. I listened to some things and not others, and I rolled my eyes, and I used the tone that I don't let my children use with me, and he's a very, very patient person. But yeah, I have to say, haven't found a thing that he was wrong about, and it's like, what I really want to do is be like, we're breaking up, I don't want to deal with you anymore. And instead, I get to make, a living amends to him, and I get to get healthier, get clearer. I haven't gotten into watching the sunrise, which apparently is very good for your mental health. Like everybody's doing it. He was doing it years ago, and now a good friend of mine was like, have you ever thought of watching the sunrise? It's really important for your mental health. And I was like, damn it. That's the last thing.
So I did it Sunday, Easter morning.
Oh, that's nice.
And, listen, I don't care how old my kids are. The Easter Bunny still had to come.
Yep.
Easter Bunny, and they're like, whatever. I'm like, whatever. You're enjoying that chocolate and that gift card right now, aren't you?
That's right.
So I was super tired because I don't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
But the baskets looked great.
Yeah.
I was happy. They're still little kids, even though they're not. And I set that alarm, and I went down to the beach in Florida where I am. my 20-year-old son was already there with his fishing pole in the water when the sun came up. And there'd been something that went on the other night with my youngest daughter the night before, and it was like, and I am so hard-headed and stubborn, and it was emotional.
Apparently, if you do it every day, it's going to change our life.
When I move to Florida in a couple months,
there you go.
I will send you a picture every single morning.
Yeah.
Because it is spiritual for me.
It's divine,
Absolutely. And the sun going down as well. But there is something about the day beginning.
It's hope.
It is every day. It's cheesy, right? A new day, a new beginning.
Yeah.
It's so true. That, which I hadn't heard as much as I've heard about the grounding now, with feet on the ground.
Oh, believe me, the boyfriend's been doing that for years too.
God love him.
They say 10 minutes a day, put your feet in the dirt.
Yeah, and it's easier in California than in Connecticut. But
that's also true.
Excuse me. I did want to ask you this because I hope you give yourself credit, a lot of credit, going backwards a little bit. Sorry, not chronological here.
Yeah.
But I wrote down these quotes because it hurt me to have read them, even though I'm not surprised based on our age and how much we weren't taught to necessarily love yourself and all the things and pay attention to your feelings. But from your Blossom years, and one of the quotes was, "I was the quirky one, the weird one." And you said we didn't get cast in commercials since what they wanted was the all-American kids. And you said, I didn't capture that vision.
Yeah.
And finally, you're not cute enough. Someone else is better.
Yeah.
Fine. You kept going and you kind of rocked it. You kind of rocked it and you've continued to rock it.
Thank you.
However, I don't care how old you are, to hear that.
Yeah.
Is it still something you heard?
I mean, look, one of the, I started acting in 1986 and no one looked like me on television. And no one looked like you on television.
Yep.
And no one looked like most of the kids in the public school I went to in Los Angeles, where I was the minority because I was white, right? Nobody looked like all those kids. All the kids I went to school with were from Mexico, they were from Guatemala, their families were from Korea, they were Black kids. I didn't grow up with what I saw on television. And so it didn't even seem possible in many ways, So that is so different now. And when we watch commercials, it's so amazing for me to say to my kids, do not take for granted what you're seeing. When you see couples who are different shapes, sizes, color, that's a reflection of this country. That's who we are. It's a reflection of the world. People all look different.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm grateful was true then and is not true now. But the other thing is the other part of it is I still am quirky, I'm still different. And that's still hard, being in the industry, being an actor, there's still a lot about non-traditional lead females, that is still a thing. I like to talk about being a size 6 or a size 8 in this industry is considered hard to fit. That's just true, And even though it doesn't matter and my body's beautiful, I'm not that person. I don't believe my stretch marks are tiger stripes. They're stretch marks, that's not my thing. And God bless the young women of today. God bless them. And the men too, who are I'm beautiful just the way that's phenomenal to me. But it's very hard to shed, the generation that we were raised in, where if you didn't look like Cindy Crawford or Kate Moss, there wasn't a place for you. And of course, there was always the exception, and and my mother would always be like, many models are asymmetrical. And so yeah, but
Mom,
right.
17 magazine and Glamour. That's what I used to get. And,
Correct. So I think that for me, people often ask me what would you tell young you? And what I would tell young me is what I would tell young me is that it doesn't necessarily get easier to be different, to look different, to think different, but you will obsess about it less. It will bother you less. You will find people that get you. And that's also the thing. We're remember when we were young and you would have relationships with toxic people, girlfriends, or people you dated, and you just kind of had to like tough it out?
Yeah.
Like so many minutes of my life were spent taking care of other people's problems that weren't mine. And I love that like our kids get to say like, this doesn't feel healthy, or I don't feel good when I'm with this person. I want to spend time with them. That gives me hope. It gives me hope because like so much of my rumination, I think, was because I didn't have enough energy even to take care of myself. Because I was like very busy in everybody else's life.
Yeah.
I was busy being of service. I was busy,
you had a good heart.
Yes.
You have a good heart. And so therefore that's the caring, but that can
It can be a defect.
And then you forget about you.
Correct. It can an asset can turn into a defect very quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about yourself now? Do you know what I mean?
I definitely feel like I understand myself better. I understand what's hard for me, meaning when things are hard, I understand it better. I feel very deeply. I'm just one of those like super feelers. And I understand it more now. I don't try and shove it away. When I see someone with special needs, I will typically start to cry. Not because I have pity for them, but because I feel deeply for people who are challenged, right? That moves me deeply, and I'm not ashamed of that anymore.
Oh, wow.
So like that to me is like, that's what it means to understand yourself.
Wait, why would you have been? You said anymore. You were ashamed of the emotions that would come out?
Okay. Of course. Like to be like, I cry all the time. Like I'm always, like I'm always like spotting that person who like needs help, And yeah, it can feel cumbersome. And now that I sort of understand what it is, I don't feel like it's a weakness, I feel like it can be a strength. So that sense of understanding myself better, I think helps me appreciate myself more.
Are you kinder to yourself?
Yeah, I'm kinder to myself. I do, I hate to say that it took a partner being able to reflect that, because I do believe you do have to love yourself before someone else can love you. But also like, sometimes you love someone else and you don't realize that they're teaching you to love yourself. And so that has been a bit of my experience in my 40s. And I didn't know it would take that long. And I have a lot of compassion for the me of my 20s and the me of my 30s who really, really thought that she understood what was going on, And then add to that, like the hormonal shifts that we women undergo, and add having an autoimmune condition, which apparently is like cumulative. And then when you hit menopause, like it can be really interesting what happens with your hormones and your thyroid. And anyway, so like add all of that. And, I'm grateful for science. I'm grateful that women finally started having more of a voice in research. And when I was a teenager, those stats would come out. Like, did you know so much money is spent on men's health, but not on women's? And people were like, you're a crazy feminist. Like, you need to go shave your legs. And now we're able to say like, oh, the patriarchy impacts us all. Absolutely. It impacts men and it impacts women. It impacts all of us. And women's health is finally coming to the place where we can say, you're having hormonal problems and that's okay. You're not just a bad person.
Oh,
just like I kind of think what many women were told, like you're just a bitch.
Yeah. And you know what? I might have been here or there. But at the end of the day, we are just fully understanding and comprehending what goes on, even in our younger years. And I had no idea about, okay, it takes 9 months, 10 months, because it's 40 weeks, not 36. Right. Do the math.
That's right.
I'm like, no,
it's not just when you want to schedule your C-section.
No.
It's actually 40 weeks.
Exactly.
Sometimes they come out earlier.
Sometimes,
and
but
you can
for
schedule
me, it was late.
It's 40.
Yes. And so 10 months to cook, to, produce the baby, to let him or her come out. Mm-hmm. And it's about a full year after that for your body to get back to quote unquote normal.
Out of my mind. Out of my mind.
But you know what else? I had heard about postpartum issues, and I didn't comprehend it until I had it.
Yeah.
And recently with making headlines, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, I've had some really awesome interactions with people that we do or don't know, some famous people. One of them was Brooke Shields. And of course, one of my, I don't idolize anybody really, but just someone I always respected and looked up to and thought,
so iconic.
You talk about, that's the word. And you talk about different experiences and your world at that age, and for her whole stories there as she's written the books. But one of the books,
the documentary,
incredible. She wrote that book that came out in 2006 as I had my third child. I think it's Down Comes the Rain, the rain, and it was about her postpartum journey. And when she reached out to me, and I think she just followed me and then put a nice comment on something, sobbing.
Yeah.
Because her courage to write that book and the crap that she wrote in the book.
She's ahead of her time to even talk about it.
Totally. And remember, Tom Cruise like freaked out and was very critical of her, and he's on the couch with Oprah, and it was the whole, and I remember like, I love Tom Cruise, and I was like, I hate you because you just mocked her and she saved me, which means she saved how many other millions of women.
Yeah.
And so I look back and, okay, we didn't call it mental health in 2006.
He was on the wrong side of history in that case. Like, she was on the right side.
Think so. Have a seat. And you know what? I could take you. I'm a lot bigger than you. But like at the end of the day, that is our mental health, and that is part of it. And forgiving our bodies and understanding that it's still changing. And now it's going the other direction, right?
Yeah.
I'm over 50 now, so it's completely changing. But I'm just so grateful that people like her did that back in the day, continue to do so now. The mental health issues that you choose to talk about and put a ton of energy and work into right now. And what's only been, 3 years since you've been doing the podcast?
Yeah, we've got over 200 episodes, And
like 1.7 million subscribers.
Yeah, well, on YouTube, half of our audience is on YouTube.
It's huge.
On my YouTube page, and then half, get it wherever they get podcasts. But we've got, 20 million downloads and counting,
It's incredible, which tells me
people want information.
That's what it is.
That's the thing. Like people want to know that they're not crazy, to have big feelings, and we mainly at this point focus on the intersection of mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
And for thousands of years, people have known that having a connection to something bigger than you changes your physiological state, and it changes your mental state. And it's not just that religious people have a community to bring them Jell-O when someone dies that makes them, have a different outlook on life.
Yeah.
It's that getting outside of yourself actually matters. And that's sort of where our focus is, like whatever that looks like for you. I don't know how to, for some people it's yoga. For some people it's holotropic breath work. For some people it's prayer and meditation. But guess what? Like the way we've been doing it is not going to cut it with everything that's going to come at us.
Look, we have numbers now. Look at the numbers and the science and the research.
Correct. If you needed numbers, now we have them.
Right. And hello, we're talking to a doctor here, a neuroscientist.
Not that kind of doctor, but yes.
But at the end of the day, it's very much clear when you see the decline and you see how many people are struggling every single day. But the vulnerability that you are choosing to have is everything to me. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to try this show is because, I don't care. And I mean this, say it till I'm blue in the face. Some people don't believe me. I don't care what you look like.
Right.
I don't care how you vote. I don't care what you believe in faith or not, or you're an atheist. I'm teamed up with Bill Maher. He is an atheist. We are complete opposite. Like, are you kidding? And guess what? Who cares?
Yeah.
When we are courageous enough to share it and to open up, that's where the magic is. Where we're able to help others because we're sharing. And especially if you're a public figure who everyone has, look at her life. What does she have to complain about? What is she? You still have crap.
Yeah.
And then when you share it, you're helping so many.
I give you the credit. I'd like to, put it back on you. You've chosen to open yourself up, and, you've had to experience a lot of things that are difficult even to handle privately, and you've had to handle them publicly. And I think we've really lost the ability to kind of have honest conversations. We've lost the ability to understand nuance. And I think, the last handful of years politically for the United States has been very, very hard. And I think that any place that we can find connection points just as humans is important. I was a little nervous because I wasn't sure what you wanted to talk about. And I wasn't sure, you always have to wonder do they want this from me? Do they have an ulterior motive? Do they want a soundbite? Do they want this? But I really appreciate, and I think a lot of people might look at it and be like, well, is she really being honest? This is kind of how I speak, like a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think like when I watch interviews, I can tell when people are giving a good interview and saying the thing, like we've talked about hard things, but I appreciate, you being able to have those conversations. And also, we don't see a lot of women in this space, who can hold court like you can, you know what I mean? And it's really like that's powerful and important too, because it's not just men that get to dole out information and teach us things. Like we need it from all sorts of people, and I really appreciate you as a woman being able to do that.
Don't make me cry. Sorry. Not yet.
Your makeup's too pretty.
Because my girl's here. But that means the world coming from you, and I'm dead serious. Yes, I've been in the broadcast world like 30 years. I'm that old. This is different.
I thought since you were a newborn, because I thought you were 30.
Again, love. What's the new thing? Everybody, Taylor Swift and everybody does. No, but there was a fear with me, let me tell you, not with you, but in general, because it's been a fear for a long time. And this is where I need like wine in my thing, but we don't have the time today. Because I know how much I have been judged and stereotyped and put in a box and headlines and clicks. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, I can here's my wish list of people who I hope to be able to talk to. And I'm like, that person probably is not going to say yes because they think that they believe a freaking headline and no one, or an 18-second soundbite, which has what? No context.
Right.
And in the media, and then people
That's the lack of nuance, right?
It's laziness.
Well, and this is something like Bill and I have talked about this as well. Like, we don't have much hope, for our culture if we can't get back to understanding nuance. Like, everything is not on your phone that you need to know. It's not going to be in however many characters are allowed now, in a tweet. Like it takes a lot of, it's a different kind of bravery. It's bravery with like a lowercase b, It takes a lot of bravery to have conversations with people also that you may not agree with.
Yeah.
And like that's like a thing that we've really lost the ability to do. I can talk to people I don't agree with. I can talk to people who think that I'm silly for believing in God. I can talk to people who think that I'm, silly for believing in science, right? Like we have to be able to have those conversations.
Well, if we don't, then honestly, I believe it's our own fault.
Yeah.
And then the divisiveness just continues. But I remember in my drama, and I'm like, oh my gosh, not one reporter reached out to say, what did you mean by this? Or did you actually say this? Mm-hmm. Or why did you say, or why, and this is what I keep telling my kids too. And anyone who'll listen, it's like, I guess you can, of course, not like what I say or what I believe. And at the end of the day, when you lead with kindness, based on remembering that everybody's got something, number one, and people's opinions are based on what? Their experiences.
Right.
And so that's why I would never judge. And it has been a struggle to accept the judgment from the outside, from the people who preach the most about diversity and tolerance and equity and diversity of thought. And I'm like, I am really easy to get a hold of, and you've chosen not to, and let's get the click instead. So there has been a lot of fear to start this thing because I know what many people believe, because what other opportunity have they had? And then I'm like, gosh, I say to my poor mother and father who are like, sometimes just stay quiet, so much easier. And I'm like, as a mother, I get that, right? And
they want to protect us.
They want to protect us even at 51. And I'm like, Mom, sorry, that's not how you raised me, And just because it got ugly, because I was actually true to myself for being proud of.
I was going to say, I often think like, would my mom say that if I was a boy, right? Meaning like sometimes also, I mean, I don't know if it's your experience, but sometimes my experience is also like, especially with women, it's like, just and
go back in your place. You go back to taking care of the world. And my mother now, she's like, get it, girl.
Wow.
And but it's been so painful when you see, when they literally had to lift me off of the floor when it was all coming down.
Yeah.
But then you get back up. Yeah. And for me, it was them, especially when you're single and kids and my faith. Yeah. And for me, absolutely. So what the hell? Be vulnerable, cry. Like, it's just easier. And you have been so strong. Listen, one of the first things I saw when I shook your hand outside is that beautiful star on your chest.
Oh, thank you.
And you know, I went to surprise my son recently for his 20th birthday in college, and I knocked on that. Everyone's like, "You're surprising him in his dorm? Like, you're taking a risk by surprising your son in college. You never know what's going to happen." And I walked in his dorm room, and one of his roommates is Jewish, who had been pretty devastated by everything that happened on October 7th, and almost as much as the reactions after, and how people have either been ugly or chosen to be silent. And I'm so proud of him. He bought, with his money, a big full-size Jewish flag.
Oh, wow.
And put it on the couch in their dorm room for his buddy. And they're not even that good of friends. They actually don't even really like each other. But
That's love. He's leading with love.
He felt what this kid must be, something he hasn't felt.
Yeah.
What this kid must be feeling, and put that up there. And it's funny, it's in the background of a picture I posted on Instagram, and a couple comments, and I'm like, okay, my 20-year-old kid, who's, okay, privileged because he has two parents who love him, and he's healthy. Look, that's called kindness.
That's right. I mean, the credit goes to you, but yeah.
Thank you, but it's here too. Yeah. Like, he's got some young lady.
It's beautiful.
Is going to be lucky someday, and he has a nice girlfriend now. We'll see. You mess with him, I will kill you all. But like, you've done it eloquently. How you have chosen to speak up and to say, you know, like, there was pain when you have an opportunity with Voices in Hollywood at the Oscars. And it's amazing some of the things people do choose to speak out on. And this, to me, was as blatant as anything. And I'm not saying sides here or there. There's devastation throughout. And people chose to stay silent. People with voices.
Like what we talked about with this, you know, the trauma Olympics, right? There seems to only be room for one pain in this kind of conversation. There's room for everyone's pain. You know, you can hold all of those things at once. And it's it's a real challenge to be, to be a liberal person who also believes that Israel has a right to exist. I'm a bleeding heart liberal, though. It's a very strange place to be. It's a strange intersection. But yeah, it's been
I don't understand that because of the facts of what we know. First of all, history. Much less October 7th. You see what I'm saying? So if, and I know what people feel, but when someone is literally hurt, killed, terror, that should not be.
No, you shouldn't.
Political.
Well, and you know, and like the one thing that I will say about it is, when October 7th happened, and all around the world, before Israel even, had the time to collect the bodies, there was celebration that struck a very deep chord with Jewish people all over the world. And, the Jewish people are often the canary in the coal mine. We're often the first that is scapegoated. It's very painful. But
have you had conversations with friends who have voices and have chosen to stay silent? Because I respect their choice, but
I mean, I think that anyone who thinks that you should celebrate the massacre of innocent people, that's a very different conversation. But, even with my kids, my older one especially, there's a conversation to be had about what does it mean when anti-Semitism rises because of the policies of the Israeli government, which we may not agree with the policies of the Israeli government. But what does it mean when there's a world increase in hatred towards one group of people because of the policies of a government that doesn't even represent them? That's called problematic, So to me, there's a real kind of, distinction to be made. And I don't understand people celebrating terrorism against any people.
Anyone.
Against any people. Yeah. And that's, it's been very painful. And I have a lot of family in Israel. I'd say the vast majority of my family is in Israel. And it's complicated. I have family on all sides of, the political spectrum. And I have family in uniform right now, But again, the actions of the Israeli government should not have any impact on the way people treat Jews in your college dorm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Finally, I just, again, I said it earlier, you've lived a life. One hell of a life, and you're raising two beautiful boys who make you look short and teeny now, I love that you said that you're beginning to slow down. And what do you want that to look like going forward, and taking time for you. And listen, we all know it could all be over tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And so I feel like you've already made such a difference, and every day you continue to do that.
Thank you.
To slow down and to receive love, because when you're such a caretaker,
exactly,
it is changing who you are to receive it, and to look back and be so proud of what you've already done.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, you know, I have one kid going to college. I don't know where he's going to go, but he's going to go. And my younger son has been homeschooled his whole life and is starting high school this fall. So I will have one going to proper school, you know, regular school for the first time, and one going to college. So I want to be, you know, available to my younger son for that, you know, kind of transition. And I want to be, you know, available to, you know, get to see my older son when he wants to be seen, you know, and when he comes home, he plans to come home. He's not going far, so he wants to be close-ish to home. So yeah, I think that's part of it. I think, you know, devoting more of my energy to the podcast and things around that is important, meaning my energy is still in like a lot of different places and a lot of different projects, and seeing what that looks like to sort of be able to focus more on like all things mind, body, spirit. You know, what does that look like? Probably a lot of time wearing these socks.
You can think of me every day.
I mean, you're now literally with me.
For life.
I mean, look, it's, sorry.
It stays
really
pretty
awesome.
tucked in, right?
It's literally eating my foot. Yeah, I love it.
Thank you. And for being so open about everything forever. I mean, for what you're doing with your show and just stuff you went through. I didn't get to even ask you about your father, and being able to honor him with a movie later. And my father is my person too. And I'm so, again, those are things that it's sometimes easier, I think, to just, we're gonna put that over here. We're gonna keep running.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting. The movie's called As They Made Us. It stars Dustin Hoffman and Candice Bergen. I wrote and I directed it.
I wrote and directed.
It was, and Simon Helberg also from Big Bang Theory was in it, and Diana Agron. Anyway, but it does deal with, you know, early divorce. So, you know, it was a time in my life when I was newly-ish divorced. So that actually comes up in the movie too. Exactly, yeah.
So I'm looking at that from a deep
level. A lot of layers.
Can I'm going to DM you on Instagram after I watch and be like,
right. Oh, it's a tearjerker, yeah.
He must be so proud.
Thank you. I'm learning to be. I'm learning to be.
And your dad.
Yeah, thank you.
God bless you. And thank you for trusting me.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.